The man who traded his shadow. In the heart of a great and prosperous city, where the streets gleamed with gold and ambition, there lived a merchant named Callum. He was a man of great skill and cunning, known for turning the slightest opportunity into fortune. But no matter how much he gained, he always wanted more. One evening, as he strolled through the winding alleys after securing yet another profitable deal, he was stopped by a hooded figure. The man's presence was unnatural. He seemed neither fully there nor entirely absent, as though he belonged to the space between shadows and light. "You seek more, don't you?" the figure murmured. Callum, startled but intrigued, nodded. "I can offer you riches beyond imagination. Wealth that will make you the envy of kings." "And what do you want in return?" Callum asked. The figure slowly raised a hand, pointing at the ground beside him. Callum followed the gesture and saw his own shadow stretching out beneath his feet. "Only this," the stranger said. Callum scoffed. "My shadow? That is nothing. It is but a trick of the sun. Take it if you wish." The stranger nodded, and before Callum could blink, his shadow peeled away from the ground as if it were a living thing. It writhed, twisted, and then slid like ink into the folds of the figure's cloak. At first, Callum felt no different. In fact, fortune smiled upon him almost immediately. His ships arrived safely at port with abundant cargo. His investments doubled in value overnight. Kings and noblemen sought his counsel, and before long, he was one of the richest men in the land. But soon, the world began to change around him. At first, it was small things. People would glance at his feet and frown. Children would whisper behind his back. Servants hesitated before approaching him. Then, as the days passed, the unease deepened. Business partners who had once admired him now avoided his gaze. Strangers flinched when he walked past, and even his most trusted friends seemed unsettled in his presence. "You cast no shadow," they murmured. "Something about you is unnatural." He laughed at their superstitions. What was a shadow compared to wealth? But as time passed, the isolation grew unbearable. People no longer invited him to gatherings. Friends no longer called upon him. Women who once admired his fortune now turned away with unease, as if some unseen force repelled them. It was as if he were fading from existence. Then came the dreams. Each night he saw his shadow, no longer his, yet unmistakably alive. It walked freely in the world, living as he once had. It laughed with friends, embraced loved ones, and moved among people with ease, while he, Callum, the richest man in the land, stood alone, watching from the edges like a ghost. One night, he stood before a great mirror in his chamber, and his breath caught in his throat. His reflection was faint, as if it, too, were beginning to vanish. A terrible realization settled upon him. His shadow had not merely been an outline cast by the sun. It had been part of his very existence. It was his presence, his soul, his connection to the world. And without it, he was no longer whole. In desperation, Callum abandoned his riches and set off in search of the cloaked stranger, hoping to undo his foolish bargain. But no matter how far he wandered, the figure was nowhere to be found. In time, the world forgot him, as though he had never truly existed at all. At its core, The Man Who Traded His Shadow is a cautionary tale about the silent price of ambition. What happens when we chase success so relentlessly that we lose the very essence of who we are? The merchant believed that wealth and power would bring him fulfillment, but in surrendering his shadow, he unknowingly gave up his identity, integrity, and connection to the world. At first, he felt triumphant, basking in the admiration that came with his newfound riches. But as time passed, he realized that something was missing. Without his shadow, people no longer looked at him the same way. He was feared, distrusted, and ultimately isolated. What he had sacrificed was not just an illusion. It was a part of himself that could not be replaced. This story reflects a profound truth. Not all success is true success. Many people chase external achievements, money, status, recognition, without considering what they are giving up in the process. They compromise their values, betray their inner voice, or mold themselves into something unrecognizable, all in pursuit of a version of success that the world tells them to chase. But no amount of wealth can compensate for the loss of self. Real success is not about what you gain. It's about what you keep along the way. Your authenticity, integrity, and sense of self-worth are worth more than any material reward. Because in the end, if you trade away the parts of yourself that make whole, you might wake up one day with everything you ever wanted, yet feel emptier than ever before.